Good afternoon, everybody. It's April 30th, 2026. Can't believe tomorrow is May 1st. Thank you for joining us today. And as a reminder, you are being recorded if you're sitting anywhere in the line of sight. But we do record our programs for our YouTube channel in case you want to watch later at Norman Rotary Club. I want to take a moment to have a moment of silence to reflect or pray. Okay, our flag salute today is going to be led by Carla Atkinson, and our four-way test is by Kyle Hurley. And I do, before we start, want to congratulate Kyle Hurley as our district governor designate, which as of July 1, he will be district governor nominee. So let's give him a round. So 2028-29, we will have district governor Hurley. So, all right. Carla.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me in four-way test of the things we think, say, or do.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Okay. I have a couple of guests today who turned in their application. Yay. Keith and Sean Menace, raise your hand. Yay. We have applications for both of them. So. Yes. All right. I don't believe we have any other guests. Am I missing anybody? No. Okay. Kyle, do you want to make an announcement?
I can do it from here. So this is a quick club runner thing. So some of your all's names don't exactly match club runner versus what they look like in my Rotary. So if I say your name, please find me after the meeting. Rob Andrew, Liz Barfield, Tom Cooper, M. Cotton, Kenny Diddlevis, Mona, Tyler LaRoe, Tim Lasher, Rainey Powell, Randy Woods. So if I call the name, just find me afterwards. It'll take 2 seconds. That's it.
Thank you. Craig, do you want to make an announcement?
We're having a little book fair on May 9th and 10th, I think, at Barnes & Noble, and I sent out a sign-up genius, I think Monday, so, and there's plenty of spots open, so please volunteer. Thanks.
Craig's being nice. That is really important that we have volunteers. It helps if you can pass the time with the partner. There are 2-hour shifts, but please look at your schedule. I know it's Mother's Day, and I know that's a hard day, but this is what, when we work these book fairs, this is what allows us to work with Barnes & Noble and getting the gift cards that we can then turn around and use to buy notes and books. So it really is important to our club. If you can spare 2 hours, even if you could just spare 1, that would be great, because poor Greg finds himself covering all the odd shifts. So let's not put him in that position this time. Sign up. If you did not get an email with the sign up genius link, please come see Kyle, because we need to make sure your email is correct in Club Runner. Yep. Okay. Okay. We do have pancakes. It's a different day than normal this coming month. It's going to be May 15th. That is a Friday. And I believe Steve is still looking for 3 more people. Is that correct? Okay. If you would like to serve pancakes on that day, please get with Steve Morin. Okay. The last announcement that I have is on your table. You can see the handout, but we have our club, all club picnic, May 13th. That is like literally 14 days away, which is, well, depends on the count today. Yes, it's really close. It's 2 weeks. That is also the launch of our companion club. So you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. If you have somebody who would like to be a member of our Rotary Club but cannot make the noon meetings, this would be a great opportunity for people to join. The companion club will not meet as frequently as our noon club does, but it will be in the evenings, probably around the 6 o'clock point, probably at some restaurant. Those who comprise the companion club will decide where they meet, when they meet, how often they meet, but they are actual members of our club. So if you know somebody, a teacher, a librarian, somebody who just cannot make the noon meeting work for them, we would love for them to come to the picnic and check it out, see what we have to offer, because, you know, it is fun. We do want it to be fun. So think about that. Okay, any announcements? Okay, I do feel like I have to say this. For those of you who filled out a card for Dennis Brigham, those got delivered by me. There was a little miscommunication on how they were getting picked up before this Celebration of Life event. I just want to come clean. They are now delivered, but they were not there at the Celebration of Life, and I apologize for that. I left town and I thought somebody was picking them up. They are now delivered where they need to be with that. So, okay. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Judge Thad Balkman serves as district judge for the 21st Judicial District of Oklahoma, and that covers Cleveland, Garvin, and McLean counties. He was appointed in 2013 and has presided over several high-profile cases and is currently serving as the leader of the state's judicial community. Before his time on the bench, Judge Balkman served as a member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives and worked in private practice. He is a graduate of Brigham Young University and the University of Oklahoma College of Law. He's married to Amy, and they have 5 children, and are expecting their first grandchild in October. How exciting. So welcome up here, Judge Balkman.
Thank you for that introduction. I had to see that, the part about the grandchild, because that's the best part of everything, right? That's the reward you get for raising 5 kids and surviving. Our fifth graduates from Northern North next month, so we're excited about that. I have to say, I have to reminisce just for a minute. I remember way back 26 years ago when I was first running for the state legislature, and I remember coveting the invitation to come and be a guest at Norman Rotary, because I, as a young candidate, wanted to get to know the who's who of Norman, and this is it. It hasn't changed. You all are a very esteemed group, and I'm thrilled to be able to come share with you a presentation today. So, I want to talk about something that we all are going to be celebrating pretty soon, right? Maybe something we've already started. But, you know, what do we call this celebration? This year, America is celebrating its 250th birthday. Maybe this word's been around before, I've never heard of it, but it's the semi-quincentennial, right? So, I was a little tiny kid for the 200th birthday, and I don't think I'll be around for the 300th, so we'll live it up. But, you know, we have a lot to celebrate. We think about our country's history. America freed the world from Nazi oppression in World War II. During the Cold War, we beat back the Soviet Union and the rise of communism. America is home to some wonderful creative innovations, including airplanes, televisions, the internet. Our system of free markets and capitalism has led to unprecedented economic prosperity in our country and beyond. People from all over the world want to come here and chase the American dream. We are a nation of we the people, for the people, of the people, as our Constitution declares. And we were the first country to declare our independence from the tyranny of a king. And many nations have looked to America in their quest to become more democratic. So we have a lot of things to be celebrating this year. I'm going to tell you about something that you probably didn't think about when you're planning your 4th of July barbecue, but I think it's every bit as important as all the other great things we associate with the United States of America. As a lawyer and as a judge, I believe that the rule of law is literally one of the things that makes America so great. The rule of law is something that we should be celebrating this semi-quincentennial. July 4th, 2026 marks the 250th birthday. our anniversary of the signing of the Declaration. Actually, technically, it was 2 days before, but we'll go 4th of July. And by signing the Declaration of Independence, that document's not just a historical document. It's really an expression, an enduring expression of the rule of law, of the guarantee and the aspirations of seeking liberty and the pursuit of happiness and equality. These are what many of us refer to as the American dream, a dream that depends on dependable institutions, unstable institutions, and predictable laws that treat people fairly. For some, the American dream begins with citizenship and the promise that individuals can become citizens through lawful processes. For others, the American dream centers on owning a home or a building and starting a business. Property rights, enforceable contracts, and transparent regulations give families and businesses the stability so that they can make informed decisions when they're risking capital, when they're deciding what they want to do. In that same vein, workers and employers rely on laws and on regulations to enforce contracts and to enforce and give them protections that they need. These expectations lead or help successful careers, thriving businesses, and stronger communities. So this rule of law, that's why it's important, because it provides the stability that allows individuals and institutions to be able to plan for the future. You'll see in all these slides, I've got Lady Liberty there, or Lady Justice, excuse me. And I want you to think about, as you see these slides, think about the scales of justice that she holds in her hand, the book of laws, and the blindfold that she wears. Think about what those mean. So let's start with the beginning, right? The best place to start with the rule of law is right at the beginning of our independence from Great Britain. When we were a colony, King George III was king, and the laws that applied to the colonies did not apply to him. He was above the law. This was the rule of a king, the rule of a man, right? Whatever King George III wanted, that was it. A government of laws, not men. These words were written by John Adams. They first appeared in a 1774 essay that he wrote, and then quickly were adopted in the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. When we talk about the rule of law, we often think of having and enforcing rules that have the power of law, right? In this context, we would be talking about rules of law. But if we simply refer to rule of law as having and enforcing rules, we're not taking into consideration the fact that there are many dictatorships that have laws, and tyrants often enforce those laws to oppress disapproved groups and perceived enemies. For example, Nazi Germany. They had and enforced laws, but they used their laws to oppress and deny freedom. Countries like North Korea and Nazi Germany did not and do not have the rule of law. They had tyranny. I'm defining the rule of law as meaning that we are governed by laws, not individuals or groups that are above the law and have the ability to oppress others. The officials that we elect do not rule, they're not rulers. In America, the laws rule, and the officials that we elect subject themselves to the laws and must conduct themselves in accordance with the laws. When powerful groups are above the law, they're free to ignore the laws because no one else has the power to enforce the laws against them or require them to submit to the authority of the courts. When we say no one is above the law, we're saying that courts must apply the laws fairly and impartially in every case, and for everybody who comes before them. And remember, courts and judges don't pick the cases or the people that come before them. That's up to prosecutors to decide who they prosecute, and it's up to individuals and corporations to decide whether, whom, and when to sue. When they do that, the courts in America, in the courts of America, no one is above the law. Everyone is equal under the law. Okay, I recently updated this slide, so let me get That's better. Is it too soon? All of the people whose pictures are on this page had either high office, fame, or wealth. Government authorities exercise their authority to bring legal actions against them and accuse them of violating laws. And in each case, the laws were applied to them. In each case, our what I do?
Yeah, all about law.
Testing. Okay, there we go. And in each case, the Constitution laws entitled them to have a fair and impartial application of those laws. So when I give this presentation to younger groups, I usually have to explain who most of these people are. I'm guessing most of you know everybody in here. We've got Nixon, General Petraeus, OJ, Martha Stewart, Harvey Weinstein, Speaker of the House Dennis Hastert, former Illinois Governor Ron Blevich, and then also our former Cleveland County Sheriff. All right, so this is a quick civics class for you. I'll try not to bore you with this, but where do our laws come from? They come from several sources, right? The first and foremost being the United States Constitution. That establishes the structure of our federal government. It establishes three distinct branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and of course the judiciary. It also gives powers to each branch, and it gives each branch the ability to ensure that the other branches do not exceed their powers. We call this separation of powers, or checks and balances. In addition, we have the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, popularly known as the Bill of Rights. And those guarantee individual rights, and they limit the government's power to interfere with those rights. We also have statutes. Statutes are laws that are written by elected senators and representatives who serve in both our federal and our state legislature. We also have administrative regulations. I would imagine many of you who are in various professions deal with regulations quite a bit, right? You probably aren't super happy about it, but that's a different discussion. All right, finally, we also get laws from court rules and decisions. Court proceedings, they have to be conducted in accordance with the requirements of the U.S. Constitution and state constitutions. Courts have to apply statutes that are passed by the legislative branch and also regulations by the executive branch. And in addition to all of these, appellate court decisions at both the federal and at the state level establish precedents regarding the application of the Constitution and laws and regulations. As a trial judge, I'm expected to have an excellent working knowledge of the procedural rules and evidentiary rules so that I can apply them in every court proceeding that I preside over. And I have to know how to find out how to apply those laws that arise in the cases before me. And that's why I always appreciate when we have good lawyers that brief those things for me. Okay? Let's talk about equal justice under the law. Our courts have to apply the laws fairly and equally to everybody, no exceptions. When people enter our courts, they expect the courts to take their concerns seriously and to treat them the same as every other person who enters the courthouse. This fairness, this impartiality is a cornerstone of our rule of law. It was mentioned in my introduction that I served in the legislature. I know many of you knew me back then. As a legislator, I was elected to represent the citizens of District 45. I was expected to listen to their concerns and then to make decisions that they liked, that they wanted to do. Even though I'm a judge in Cleveland County, I don't represent Cleveland County. The way I judge somebody from Cleveland County or Garfield County or New York, they all get the same treatment, right? That's the major difference between those branches of government. I'll never forget when I first became a judge, somebody mentioned to me, Thad, you used to be a partisan legislator. What are you going to do to make sure that you treat everybody fairly as a judge? And I made a commitment when I first became a judge that even though I had served in the legislature, I was a Republican, I wanted to serve in a way as a judge that the most yellow dog staunch Democrat could come right before me and feel like they were getting the same amount of justice as anybody else. Hopefully I've done that. I'm sure if I haven't, I'll find out about it in the next election. All right, so I've got a few what ifs. These are kind of fun. These kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about the rule of law. All right, so would it be okay if a judge always rules in favor of patients who sue doctors? Do we have any doctors here? I know Keith's a healthcare professional, but can you see why that wouldn't be okay, right? If there was a judge that was known to always rule in favor of the patients, judges aren't supposed to do that, right? They're not supposed to do that. What about this one? Would it be okay if a judge decides a case for a party because it would help the judge get reelected? We do have to get reelected. In Oklahoma, our appellate judges, they're appointed by the governor, and they serve on a retention ballot. Every 6 years, you go and vote whether to retain them or not. The trial judges, like me, we are elected every 4 years, and anybody who's a qualified attorney can run to be a judge, right? So we have to raise money. We have to ask people for votes. Kind of uncomfortable, quite honestly, but that's the way the system's set up. But it would be totally inappropriate for a judge to be persuaded on a decision because they think it's going to help them get reelected. And again, I'll give you a quick anecdote. So right after I got appointed to be a judge in 2013, the organizers of the Norman Music Festival announced that they're part of their planning to use Main Street is they were going to, of course, close it down to traffic, and then they were going to erect fencing, and they were going to post signs, and they were going to forbid guns from being brought into Main Street. Well, the Oklahoma Second Amendment Association filed a lawsuit, got signed to me, and they basically were asking me to forbid the Norman Music Festival from enforcing that. They thought it was encroaching on the Second Amendment. Well, as you can imagine, we're in Oklahoma, right? There's a lot of people in Oklahoma that really like guns, and they're very vocal at the ballot box. And you can probably think about that many politicians probably are persuaded by the gun lobby. The gun lobby, their organization was actually the plaintiff in this lawsuit, and I listed all the evidence. I'm a gun owner too, but at the end of the day, I came out on the side of the Norman Music Festival because we limit all kinds of rights all the time, right? I mean, our First Amendment rights we have limitations. You cannot carry guns on school facilities. There's all kinds of limitations, and as a matter of fact, the city can set limitations on gun use, and it was proper in that instance with the Norman Music Festival. All right, so here's another. Would it be okay if a judge decides a case for a party because that party happens to be a state legislator? Well, there's quite a few state legislators who are attorneys, right? And can you see where a judge might be tempted to think, well, I need this legislator to help the judges out next time there's a big vote. We may want to give them special treatment on a docket or whatever. Can't do that, right? Again, everybody's supposed to be treated the same. It doesn't matter your status, how much power you have, or how much power you may not have. Okay? Here's another funny one. Not funny, but I think it kind of goes to what I was saying. What if a judge decides a case for a party because a public poll says public opinion favors that party's position? This kind of goes back to the gun issue, right? Oftentimes, judges have to make decisions that aren't popular. Now, I made a very popular decision recently. I'm sure the only people who don't know that are the OSU Cowboy fans. But I joked, as I read the briefs in that Heineke case, for that hearing, and there was a lot of briefs for one hearing. I joked to Amy, my wife, I said, honey, you may not want to be sitting around morning with me if I rule the way I'm thinking I'm going to rule. Because it was not despite what you might think, it was not just an easy decision. And that was kind of the back of my mind is, I may be making a decision and I may want to duck out of town for a few years. But that's just kind of the occupational hazard we have, right? Judges, our oath is to the Constitution, is to nothing else. And this kind of leads off into a different tangent, but unfortunately, we all hear, we all see it in the news, the toxicity that pervades politics today. Unfortunately, more and more of my judicial colleagues are getting threats from angry litigants. And that's really unfortunate, right? We would like to think here in the United States of America, we're a more civilized society. For the most part, we haven't. Unfortunately, that's a trend that's going the other way. I hope it will change. Okay. Now, imagine you were a party in a lawsuit, and imagine if these things were true. What would it be like if powerful individuals and groups were above the law, and those individuals created laws that required courts to decide things based upon certain characteristics, okay? So I'll name off a few. I'll just kind of go through these quickly here. Courts need to decide things based on a party's race or their ethnicity, or maybe where they come from, or their religion. Okay? Or what if the people in power commanded courts to rule based on what party someone was from, or where they lived? You know, if they lived on the east side or the west side. What about their health and fitness? Should there be preference given because of somebody's health? Finally, a loyalty oath. I think we can all agree that courts should not necessarily take these things into consideration. In fact, when I do a jury trial, one of the instructions I give to the jurors is that they are not to take into consideration a defendant's race or their nationality or their religion. And hopefully they don't do those things, right? Remember, justice is supposed to be blind, right? That's why Lady Justice has that blind eye. So, these are things that, fortunately, for the most part of our nation's history, we've had a system of justice that gives everyone the same rights, regardless of these things, right? And I think that's a really good thing. So, the rule of law, again, nobody should be above the rule of law. I think it's really something we should celebrate this year. I hope that as you have an opportunity to talk to your neighbors, your kids, your grandkids, whoever is in your sphere of influence, let them know that this is one of the great things our country has going for it. We can all point to things that are not going well, but for the most part, this is a good thing, and I hope that we can commit to making sure that we have courts and judges who hold everybody accountable and subject to the law. Make sure that everybody has equal justice under the law, and that everyone has the right to fair and impartial procedures. And I think if we can do that, hopefully our descendants will sit here in another 250 years and be able to have the same things. So that's my presentation to you, and I wanted to just intentionally leave time if people had any questions to ask me about my job, my role. Start with David back there.
I'm old enough to remember the judicial scandal of the 60s that led to the creation of the Judicial Nominating Commission. Speaking of legislators that get upset at judicial rulings, there seems over the last few years to be a continuing effort to change the judicial nominating process. You were appointed yourself and then just stood election. You didn't, I guess, go through that process. What do you think about that? Is that a good idea to change the way we do it? I mean, it was created to address the scandal. Personally, I think it's working pretty good, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Judicial Nominating Commission. That's what's called the JNC. So back in the 30s, 40s, there was Supreme Court justices in Oklahoma that were accepting bribes to rule on cases. Those bribes were dressed up as campaign donations, okay? But they were bribes. It resulted in 3 members of the Supreme Court being removed or impeached or imprisoned. And as a result, by a vote of the people, Oklahoma changed its way that judges are selected. We used to have a partisan election of judges, if you can believe that. Just like Texas has today. Judges ran as Republicans and Democrats. We did away with that. We went to a merit-based system of appointing judges. I actually did go through the JNC because in 2013, Judge Tom Lucas, who I replaced, he retired before the end of his term. So there was a vacancy. When there's a vacancy, then trial judges are appointed by the governor. But then, yes, ever since then, I've had to stand for It's a good system because the JNC will look at all the applications. They will, like, when I applied to be a judge, I filled out my application, why do you want to be a judge, what's your experience? I also had to sign a release for the IRS and the tax commission to hand over my taxes. I had to submit my credit rating. That's to make sure that people who are judges are not susceptible to making dumb mistakes. That Judicial Nominating Commission consists of 15 members. Half are appointed by the governor. The other half are lawyers in the bar. The legislature gets to appoint a couple of them. And they sit and they review these applications, and then they interview candidates. I sat through about a 40-minute interview. They select who they believe are the top 3 most qualified applicants, and then the governor interviews and gets to select who that person is. It's a great system. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our legislature forget history. Also, there have been special interests in this state who don't like having judges that are independent and impartial. And so they have made it kind of a political issue to do away with the JNC and use back to more of a partisan political system, which I think would be a big mistake for Oklahoma. Just in the back.
Yeah, thank you. A comment and a question. I really liked the beginning of your presentation there, and I think there's probably 535 folks in DC that might require that presentation, by the way. And then my question is, it was really interesting yesterday, we had a descendant of that very king, King George, come talk to us, and I would like to kind of get your impression of his speech, because it certainly seemed like he was reminding us of those very ideas that he's in favor of, that we rebelled against back in 1776. What do you got to say about that?
I didn't get to watch the whole speech, but I watched some of the highlights, and it was really cool. By the way, my mom also geeked out about the royals, and I remember growing up, whenever Queen Elizabeth was on the TV, she'd want to watch. One thing that stands out from what King Charles mentioned was, this notion that even though we are a Judeo-Christian based society, and there's no denying that many of our laws are based on that, and the majority of the first people that came to America were Christians. We are very much a pluralistic society, and we need to make sure that everybody is welcome here, and it gets back to my point that minorities need to have their rights protected too. And that was one thing I heard him talk about, and I think we need to make sure we continue to demand, right, that all of our government institutions give everybody a fair shot, regardless of where they come from. Yes, no.
Yeah, Judge, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that the term lawfare has become popular in the last few years, and I wonder if that causes some kind of breakdown in the rule of law, or another issue might be selective enforcement of the law seems to be more prominent. Do you see that any of those things locally, or how do you respond to that?
I think that what you've seen at the federal level and maybe in some other states has not made it to Oklahoma, and I hope it doesn't. I can tell you, I don't see any of that here in our district. I really think that, even though we always think the governor is the highest state-ranking official, I think it's actually the Attorney General in Oklahoma. If you think about the power of the Attorney General, just like at the county, the power that the district attorney has, they get to decide what to charge. They get to decide what charges somebody has and whether something prosecuted. That is a very, very powerful thing. And so, it kind of saddens me, not that I want people to have elections, I don't, but sometimes I wonder, nobody really pays attention to some of these elections, but they're important. To get back to the lawfare notion, it happens on both sides. We're seeing it. There's not one party that has a monopoly on lawfare, but it's sad, because I think what I see from my point is, every time I do a jury trial, we spend like half a day or sometimes a whole day doing jury selection. Anybody here done jury selection? Yeah, it's not the most fun thing, is it? But a lot of times we ask jurors about their attitudes about the criminal justice system, especially if it's a criminal case, because we want to know if somebody's really pro-defense or
police or whatever, we at least need to know those things. But I've seen people express a lot of skepticism because of what they read in the news or what they watch, and there's a lot, and I think ultimately, they don't want to say this, but I think it does affect people's confidence and faith in the court system, right? Because they see it happen there, they assume it happens here. And that's really sad. I hope we can beat that back. Yes?
Yeah, thank you, Judge, for that presentation. I enjoyed that. But just to lighten things up a little bit, I went to high school, Norman High, 75. We had a couple of celebrities in our class, like Bob Berry Jr.
I know where this is going.
and Andy Rieger. Did you go to high school in California?
I did. I try not to tell people I'm a Californian.
Surely there's some celebrities and friends that are in your class.
Oh, yes.
You want to mention any?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was born and raised in Long Beach, California, and went to high school there. Incidentally, my parents are both Oklahomans, so I always tell people I'm kind of a reverse Okie. You know, I go back the other way. But I went to a school called Long Beach Poly. Long Beach Poly can claim that we have more players in the NFL than any other public high school in the United States. We also had an excellent college prep program. I started college with 48 credit hours with all the AP courses I did. But among my many classmates was a guy named Calvin Brodus. I'm sure nobody knows that name. But his more popular common name is Snoop Dogg. And he's an Olympic commentator, among other things. So Snoop Dogg and I were in the class of 1989, so that tells you how old I am. And, you know, I did not necessarily know him a lot at high school. We didn't exactly run in the same circles. But we are classmates, and at our 25th anniversary in 2019, he threw a really cool after party for all the classes and all of our classmates. And, you know, everybody wanted a picture with him. And so I was over here, you know, and I saw him taking pictures. So I went over there, and we had the name tags, right? And it had my name. I come to get him to sign my name tag. So I peel it off, and I find a pen, and I wait for my moment. And I say, hey, you know, I'm Thad Balkman. You know, it's nice to meet you. Would you sign this? Let me take a picture of you. And he looks at my name tag and goes, "He was my class president, huh?" And I said, "Actually, I was your class president." So he remembered me. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, so he was my classmate, and then one grade below me, she and I went to the same high school, junior high, and elementary school, all 12 years. Was Cameron Diaz. She lived about half a mile away from me. So.
One last thing, and I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe the house you lived in is well known for some reason?
Yes, that's true too. So I grew up in California. They film a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies there. The house that I grew up in for most of my life, from the time I was 5 till the time I left college, was the house that's featured in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's Ferris's house. It's the White House with the green shutters and the circle driveway. It was actually used in a couple other movies that aren't quite as popular, but yeah, they filmed 10 days there, filming the movie there. So that was kind of a neat deal. Of course, you know, when they film a movie, you have no idea if it's going to be a flop or dumb or terrible. So it was kind of neat that it ended up being a popular movie. Yeah, so that's my 15 minutes of fame, I guess, right? I did have one more slide. It's just some sources I've enjoyed, you know, teaching me about America. Everything from the musical Hamilton to you know, totally nerdy things like the Federalist Papers. So there's kind of something for everyone up there. Any other questions? Yes.
I thought we were ending on Snoop Dogg.
Thank you for being here, Judge. I'm wondering, is there one, because you were talking about all the things you consider in your judgment, or things that you toss out, anything that finally silenced you, none of those converged, and you didn't know where to go?
Well, you know, the times that I've had trouble making the decision, I get, you know, being a judge, you do have a lot of perks. For example, if I feel like the lawyers have not given me the law that I need to know to base it on. And I've done this a few times. I can say, hey, I'm not ready to make a decision yet. I don't think you briefed me sufficiently. And I can go back, submit new briefs, and let's do this over again. That happened, I can't remember the specific issue, but there was something in the state's case against Johnson & Johnson, an opioid case I did back in 2019. I remember there was, I wish I could remember the exact issue. I think it was on whether or not to have a jury trial or not. And we ended up not having a jury trial. But there's cases like that where sometimes I'm not comfortable based on what they give me, so I tell them to go back and brief it again and come back and try again next time. So I get to do that as a judge. I can, you know, that's the nice thing about where I am. I mean, there are times when a decision has to be made. There are legitimate emergencies. For example, if somebody is stalking you and you come and you need a protective order, that decision needs to be made, right? There's other times when we have the luxury of going slow. And I never forget this. When I first became a judge, Judge Tracy Schumacher told me, she goes, Thad, just remember that you're a district judge. This is not fast food justice. This is not drive-through justice. Take your time, be deliberate, don't rush things. So I try to do that.
The other thing, we started reading the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July. And we always read just the first part, you know, get rid of that king, that sort of thing. Last year we read the whole thing. Oh my goodness. We really thought we were getting rid of a lot of stuff. It's harder to keep that stuff.
Pretty interesting reading, a lot of grievances against the king.
Yeah. It's good reading anyway. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
All right, thanks everybody.
Okay, that was very fascinating. Okay, I do want to recognize our student of the month, Andrew, who came in a little bit after I made the introduction. So just thank you for being here. You want to?
Yes,
Thank you.
this is Andrew from North High School. This is his last Thursday here. We're glad to have him. Judge, I want you to know that Andrew says you're the real deal. Andrew was gone last week. He might tell us where he went to visit. And then also the question today is, what have you learned about Rotary and Rotary Club since you've been with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry I couldn't make last week's meeting. I was visiting Stanford University for college. I plan to attend there with a major in Earth Systems. Something very interesting to me. So to answer the question, what I learned about Rotary Club? So I took a look at the website, and they've got service, community involvement, and fellowship. Right. So I think for me, I've really learned a lot about the service on the website, especially food drives, donations to the pantry, also just volunteering events. And I also have a friend, Gregory Williams. I believe he leads the Rotary Club at Norman North. And so he's always been someone to volunteer. He's a great guy. And in terms of community involvement, I was here 2 weeks ago, and we got to hear the story of Storypalooza, Harrison Bookborn, and I think that was really inspirational to me. I've always been someone that valued education and reading books, and so seeing what Rotary is doing to give back in terms of that is absolutely wonderful for me. And then fellowship too, I think out of the donations and the events, I think fellowship is one of the things that's really important for Rotary Club. It's really a community of members here. And from the presentations today and the presentations my first week about international trade, I've really learned a lot, and I can tell that's a reflection of the club. We're all lifelong learners here, and I'm so thankful to be able to join this community for this system.
Great.
Discussing the world. Great. Okay, thank you for being here. And on that note, there was a little segue in there. I just got confirmation for our dates for Storypalooza 2027. So put your calendars, get them out, and put April 2nd and 3rd on your calendars, and that will be Storypalooza 2027. So thank you, Judge Balkman, for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you, Keith and Sean. We'll get you full-fledged members soon. So y'all have a good afternoon and a good week. See you.